this is a 5. I'm sure you're familiar. 5 is a whole number. 5 also represents a quantity that looks really familiar to us. We see it every day. We've got 5 fingers on each hand, there's 5 minutes on the clock, and we have 5 toes on each foot. But 5 also looks like this. 5 is just 5 short jumps away from 0 on the number line. Let's take a closer look at that number line. So here's our friendly number line, and you can see that the number 5 is still 5 short jumps away from 0. But if we look closely in between each whole number, we have something we call fractions. Fractions are the equal parts in between whole numbers. Much like whole numbers, fractions have special names too. Here we have a whole partitioned into 4 equal parts. We call these parts fourths or quarters. Think about 4 quarters in a dollar. Here we have a whole partitioned into 2 equal parts. We call these parts halves. And here we have a whole partitioned into 3 equal parts. We call these parts thirds. And here we have a whole partitioned into only 1 part. We call this very special part a whole. This is 1 whole. Not to be confused with this 1 whole, which is a very different whole. So here are some other important things you're going to want to know about fractions. Fractions are a number where 2 numbers stand one on top of the other with a bar in between them. The top number we call the numerator, and the bottom number we call the denominator. A good tip to remember where the numerator and the denominator go is to look at the D at the beginning of the word denominator and think D denominator, D down. Say that with me. D denominator, D down. One more time. D denominator, D down. The denominator is the bottom number in your fraction. Denominators, just like whole numbers and just like fractions, also have special names. So here we have the denominator 2. The denominator 2 represents 2 equal parts of a whole, which we can call halves. That number 2 in the denominator part of your fraction represents halves. The number 4 in the denominator place represents 4 equal parts of a whole. Can you think of what this might be called? The special name for a 4 in the denominator is fourths or quarters. A 3 in the denominator would be thirds. A 5 in the denominator would be fifths, and so on. If this is 1 whole, what's this? Well, let's break it down. Here's 1 whole, or 1 over 1. Here's 2 wholes, or 2 over 1. And here's 3 wholes, or 3 over 1. Take a second and pause the video. What do you notice about the numerator? The numerator represents how many total parts we're looking at in all. So you can see that we have 1, 2, 3 total parts in all. Alright, pause the video again. What do you notice about the denominator, or that bottom number in your fraction? The denominator represents how many parts make up each whole. Each whole is made up of only 1 part, so our fractions would all have the denominator of 1. But the numerator changes with each whole we add to our model. This all all sounds very confusing, but remember, the denominators have special names. The number 1 as a denominator has a very special name, and that special name is wholes. So a denominator 1 reads wholes. So let's break it down step by step. Here's a whole number 2. Here are 2 things. In order to represent 2 as a fraction, we first want to write the numerator, which is the total number of parts. On your fingers, hold up how many total parts this model has. 1, 2. If you held up 2 fingers, you were right. To write the denominator, we want to look at the number of parts each whole has. On your fingers, hold up how many parts each whole has. Well, if you held up 1 finger, you're right. It only takes 1 part to make up each of these wholes. So our fraction would be written as 2 over 1 or 2 wholes. So now I want you to try it. On your whiteboard, write the whole number 6 and draw a model of 6 things. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, in order to represent 6 as a fraction, go ahead and count how many total parts there are. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If you wrote the numerator as 6, you're right, there are 6 total parts. What do you think the denominator should be? Remember that the denominator is the number each whole is made up of. If you counted 1 part in each whole and recorded a 1 for your denominator, then you should have 6 over 1 or 6 wholes. So the whole number 6 can be represented by this fraction. All right, now you're on your own. One more. Here's the whole number 4. Go ahead, pause this video for a moment, draw a model of 4 things, and then write the fraction that represents the whole number 4. Your model should have looked something like this to start. When you represented it as a fraction, you should have counted 4 parts total and 1 part in each whole. Your fraction should read 4 over 1 or 4 wholes. Thumbs up if you had 4 wholes on your whiteboard. Great, you guys are on a roll. So let's go back to this very special whole number, 5. We already know that 5 is very familiar. We've got those 5 fingers, the 5 minutes, the 5 toes. But 5 can also be represented as a fraction. Here are 5 things, and we know that 5 can be represented as 5 over 1, or 5 wholes. Okay, let's review. In this video, we learned the parts of a fraction. We learned that the numerator and the denominator make up a fraction, and that they both have very important jobs. We also learned the special names for denominators. We learned that the denominator 1 can be read as wholes. The denominator 2 can be read as halves, and so on. We also learned how to write whole numbers as fractions. We know that 5 can be represented as 5 over 1 or 5 wholes. You think you're ready to try this on your own? Keep practicing by drawing models for whole numbers and writing them as fractions. Thanks for watching. Remember, you can always rewind and rewatch any part of this video until you really know the content. Great job!